Margot Hale always believed that love, like tradition, was built in the quiet rituals, the family dinners, the Sunday table settings, the extra sprig of thyme in Daniel's lamb roast. That evening, she had pulled out her mother's vintage china, polished the silver by hand, and arranged freshly cut gardenias as the centerpiece. 30 years of marriage deserved grace, she thought, dignity. Her son Liam was finally bringing his new in-laws to the house for the first time since his whirlwind wedding to Tessa. Margot hoped tonight would bridge the cold gap that had quietly formed since then. She prayed that warmth, real warmth, might return. Instead, the house felt like a museum, silent, cold. Tessa arrived first, chic and pristine in a cream silk blouse and diamond studs that sparkled with the kind of cruelty only wealth could afford. She kissed the air beside Margot's cheek. "Oh, what a quaint setting," she remarked, gazing over the table. "It's like stepping into a time capsule." Before Margot could respond, Daniel walked in, not with his usual ease, but with the stiffness of a man about to read a script. He didn't kiss her, not even a glance. Dinner began with brittle conversation. Margot offered roast lamb, minted peas, and lemon potatoes. Tessa declined the meat. Of course, Margot forgot she was newly vegetarian. Liam seemed restless, checking his phone, avoiding eye contact. Halfway through the meal, as Margot poured wine, Daniel cleared his throat. "I think we should say something," he said. His voice was too formal, too rehearsed. Margot froze. Daniel set down his glass, folding his napkin with surgical precision. "Margot, I filed for divorce. Effective immediately. You'll be served this week." The silence was not a pause. It was a void. "I don't understand," Margot whispered, the stem of her wine glass trembling in her hand. "Is this a joke?" "I've moved out," he continued, eyes flat. "I've been staying in a condo in Rivercross for the last few weeks. This marriage hasn't worked for years. We both know it." "Do we?" she asked, voice breaking. Before Margot could grasp the betrayal, Tessa stood. "Actually, Margot, we've been meaning to speak with you. This house, it's legally under Hale Development's name now. With the restructuring happening, it's best you find other accommodations." "Other accommoda?" Margot stared, blinking. "This is my home." Liam finally looked up. His expression was tight, but he didn't speak. "Liam." Margot turned to him, begging for sanity. "Say something." Liam shifted in his chair. "Mom, maybe it's better this way. It's not personal. Things have changed." His words struck harder than Daniel's announcement. Her son, her only child, was asking her to leave. "Changed?" she echoed. "I raised you in this house. I gave up my career, my family, everything, for this family." Tessa's father, Gregory Stanton, finally spoke from the end of the table. "It's a matter of efficiency, Mrs. Hale. With the merger between Hale Development and Stanton Global finalizing this quarter, your presence is disruptive." Margot stared around the room, her pulse thudding in her ears. The walls, once covered in memories, felt alien. Her wedding photo, once hanging proudly in the hallway, was gone. "Fine," she said softly, her voice stripped to its bones. "I'll go." She walked up the stairs slowly, with no one following. In her bedroom, she packed a single suitcase. No one came to help. No one tried to stop her. As she descended the staircase, she paused at the bottom step and took one last look at the house she'd turned into a home. Then, as she stepped outside into the crisp night air, she caught a glimpse of something strange. Across the lawn, under the dim porch light of the guest house, Daniel was handing an envelope to Gregory Stanton. The two men spoke in hushed tones. Daniel's body language was deferential, almost nervous. Gregory gave a curt nod and tucked the envelope into his coat. Margot ducked behind a hedge, unseen. Her breath caught. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a deal. The key barely turned in the lock anymore. Simone Devereaux hadn't changed the deadbolt in 15 years, and now, in the dead of night, the familiar click sounded like a cannon shot. Margot stepped into the house she hadn't visited since her father's funeral, clutching her suitcase as if it were a lifeline. Simone emerged from the kitchen barefoot, her robe falling off one shoulder, a glass of wine already in hand. "You look like someone set your soul on fire and told you to put it out with a teaspoon." Margot collapsed into Simone's arms. She hadn't cried at the house, or on the cab ride, or even when she passed the city limits. But now the tears came, quiet and unrelenting. Simone didn't ask questions. Not yet. They sat on the worn velvet couch, drinking in silence, until Margot finally whispered, "They threw me out like garbage. Daniel, Liam, Tessa and her father, like they'd rehearsed it. Like I was just in the way." Simone's sharp eyes narrowed. "You always told me you suspected Daniel married you for more than love. I just never thought you'd be so lazy about the betrayal." Margot wiped her eyes. It felt choreographed, and there was this envelope. He handed it to Gregory Stanton. "After everything." Simone sat up straighter. "Gregory Stanton? You mean Tessa's father?" Margot nodded. "And he said something was disruptive. I was disruptive." A shadow passed over Simone's face. "He's more than a businessman. The Stantons have ties to everything. Real estate, media, finance, private lobbying. But they keep their scandals locked behind non-disclosure agreements and offshore vaults." "Do you think this was more than just a marriage falling apart?" Margot asked. Simone didn't answer directly. She stood, pulled out her old leather briefcase, and dropped it on the coffee table. "Let's find out." By morning, Simone had unearthed a cache of documents from her days as a journalist. Records, whispers, unfinished articles, and one particularly juicy file labeled Stanton Acquisition Hale Development. Margot leaned over the pages, her eyes widening. "This says Gregory was interested in a hostile takeover over 5 years ago." Simone smirked. "And what's the best way to destabilize a private family company that won't sell? Turn the family inside out." Margot swallowed. "They used Tessa. They used my son." Simone hesitated. "That's not the worst of it." She handed Margot a manila envelope with a printed date circled in red, 4 months before the divorce. It was a signed private merger agreement, naming Daniel Hale and Gregory Stanton as co-partners in a new development initiative. The contract didn't list Margot's name. In fact, it made no mention of her at all. "I helped Daniel draft the Articles of Incorporation for Hale Foundation," Margot said, stunned. "He said it was ours. Our legacy." Simone took a deep breath. "Daniel never needed you as a partner. He needed you as a front, a Hale with heart. You made him respectable in public." Margot sat back, hollow. "And when he didn't need the illusion anymore, they wiped you clean," Simone finished. Just then Margot's phone buzzed. It was a photo message, from an unknown number. She opened it. The image nearly made her drop the phone. A snapshot from years ago, Daniel in a hotel lobby, hand in hand. Not with Tessa, not even with a stranger. With Tessa's mother, Vivienne Stanton. Margot's world tilted. "No," she breathed. "No, that's impossible." Simone leaned in. "It's not just a business alliance. It's been a decades-long affair." Later that afternoon, the pieces began falling into place like cursed dominoes. Margot recalled moments. The subtle looks between Daniel and Vivienne at Liam's wedding, the way Gregory had always addressed Daniel with just a bit too much familiarity. And Tessa, so smug, so secure, wasn't just Daniel's daughter-in-law. She was the product of a grand arrangement, a dynasty in disguise. I was the placeholder," Margot whispered, the polite, acceptable mask while they planned everything behind closed doors. Simone flipped to the back of the merger documents. "If this is correct, your name was deliberately removed from all joint properties in a board vote 2 months ago. They planned your erasure." Margot stood, shaking. Then I want it all back. I want to scorch the ground they built their house of lies on. Simone's grin was slow and fierce. Then we start with exposing the affair. And we trace every paper trail. Margot nodded, steel growing in her spine. She had been cast aside, discarded like yesterday's press release. But now she knew better. This wasn't the end. It was the blueprint to begin again. Margot Hale hadn't returned to the attic since her father's funeral. The smell of mothballs and old pine clung to the air as she climbed the creaking steps in Simone's ancestral home, the single bulb overhead flickering like a hesitant confession. She wasn't sure what drew her there, only that she couldn't sleep, that there was something buzzing beneath her skin, like memory trying to claw its way out. Dust clung to every surface. She opened a battered trunk at the back, a time capsule sealed shut since she'd first stored boxes after marrying Daniel. Yellowed letters, faded photos, a child's drawing, 2 girls holding hands beside a red house, one with Margot's name under it, the other, Delilah. Her breath caught. The name she never spoke aloud anymore. Delilah. Her sister. Her twin. Lost in a fire when they were just 10. Or so she'd always believed. She reached deeper into the box, her hands shaking. Beneath a tangle of brittle linens and brittle emotion, she found something that did not belong. A velvet pouch tucked inside the folds of an old baby blanket. She opened it slowly. A gold locket. Margot recognized it instantly. The heart-shaped charm Delilah had worn every day since their mother gave it to her on their 5th birthday. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a photo of the 2 of them, identical, smiling, oblivious. And folded behind the photo, impossibly, a note written in a child's hand, but not a child's thoughts. They're lying to you. We were never supposed to stay together. Watch the man with the cane. Find the inheritance ledger. Trust no one they send. Margot stared at the scrawled words. Her vision blurred. She sank to the floor, clutching the locket. "Simone!" she cried out. "Come up here!" Simone was up the stairs in seconds, barefoot and breathless. "What is it?" Margot showed her the note. "She's alive. I don't know how, but this couldn't have been planted. I packed this trunk myself 30 years ago." Simone read the note in silence, eyes narrowing at the mention of the cane. "Gregory Stanton uses one," she said grimly. Margot blinked. "You think Gregory? He was involved that long ago?" Simone didn't answer directly. Instead, she pulled out her laptop. "There's an old rumor I never pursued. A scandal buried in court records from the 90s about Stanton Global acquiring a bankrupt orphanage. The orphanage was run by a shell trust, the same one that now owns your home." Margot's blood ran cold. "Are you saying?" "They've had a hand in your life for decades, Margot. You weren't just cast out. You were targeted. From the beginning." The next morning, Margot ventured to her family's old storage unit. She hadn't been there since before Liam was born. Dust settled like snow on every surface. In a trunk marked Hale pre-marriage, she found school records, adoption forms, and a red leather diary belonging to her mother, Evangeline Hale. She flipped through the pages, heart racing, until she found one entry that stopped her breath. "The fire spared Delilah. They told me she died, but the body was never hers. Gregory offered to protect us, said I had no choice but to give one child up. I chose Margot. I pray God forgives me." Margot collapsed into the old wooden chair beside the trunk, her world warping into something unrecognizable. Her mother chose. Delilah had been taken, hidden, and her own family had helped it happen? Her chest clenched. The conspiracy was older than her marriage, older than her motherhood. It wasn't a fall from grace, it was a life built on lies. That night, back at Simone's, a burner phone buzzed with an anonymous number. Margot answered hesitantly. "Hello?" A voice, raspy but undeniably female, spoke on the other end. "You found the locket." Margot's spine straightened. "Who is this?" You already know. Delilah? Silence. Then, I watched you walk away from that house. Just like I watched you forget me. Tears welled up. I never forgot. I warned you. In the note. You were supposed to find the ledger before they did. They know you're looking now. You've put us both in danger. Where are you? Click. Margot stared at the phone, a scream lodged in her throat. Simone rushed in, holding her own phone. I traced the call. She turned the screen toward Margot. A street camera still image. A woman in a gray coat, standing across from the Hale Foundation gala from 2 nights ago, her face partially turned, but unmistakable. Delilah. Alive. Watching. Waiting. Tessa Stanton Hale paced the pristine white marble of the master bathroom in the Hale estate. Her eyes, once perfectly poised, twitched with unease. A stack of newspapers lay on the counter, all highlighting the same event. Hale Foundation's 25th anniversary gala, celebrating legacy, loyalty, and philanthropy. The photo splashed across every page was not of her or Liam or Daniel. It was the background, barely visible, almost a ghost. But there she was, Delilah. Tessa had the photo enhanced, digitally scrubbed, magnified. She couldn't deny it. She knew that face. Not from childhood, not directly, but from a family dossier. A dossier her father had once locked in a vault and claimed was for leverage. The girl who should have died in a fire, the girl who'd vanished, the twin, Delilah. And where Delilah walked, Margot followed. Tessa's nails dug into the counter until blood blossomed beneath her manicure. Across town, Margot and Simone studied the same photo in Simone's apartment, a string of pins and papers now forming a growing web across her wall. She's not just alive, Margot said, voice tight. She's circling, waiting, watching the same people we are. Simone nodded. And now we have more than a conspiracy. We have evidence. She gestured toward the items they'd collected. The signed merger agreement between Daniel and Gregory. The photo of Daniel and Vivienne Stanton hand in hand. The forged Hale Foundation documents, with Margot's name erased in favor of Stanton family trustees. And now the image of Delilah standing beside a Stanton driver. But something else gnawed at Simone. Why would Delilah show up now, unless she's trying to stop something, Margot said, her voice low. Back at the Hale estate, Liam watched his wife warily from across the kitchen island. She stirred her espresso, but her mind was clearly elsewhere. You're quiet, he said. Tessa flashed her usual smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Just tired. I've been dealing with some foundation paperwork. Cleaning up your mother's old messes. Liam flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? She snapped too quickly. Then, smoothing her tone, she added, She abandoned her post, Liam. Walked out like a martyr. We're just stabilizing things. For your sake. He didn't respond. He kept seeing the look on his mother's face that night. The betrayal, the disbelief, the silence. Not anger, just loss. And something else had begun to fester in his thoughts. Tiny gaps in timelines, in explanations. His father's awkward avoidance. His wife's sudden power over family finances. And most of all, Margot's final words before leaving, You're choosing someone else's story over mine. Later that night, Margot and Simone attended a public fundraiser for the Hale Foundation, held at the Stanton Gallery downtown. A risky move, but they needed answers. Margot wore a tailored black dress, her hair pinned in a simple chignon. She blended with the crowd like a ghost among royalty. Simone, dressed sharply and holding a tiny pen camera, surveyed the perimeter. Security's tight, more than usual. Margot scanned the event wall. Dozens of photos of Hale Foundation history, projects, awards, press events, all curated to perfection, but something was missing. Every single group photo taken in the last 5 years, Margot had been cropped out, literally. In one, where she distinctly remembered standing between Daniel and Liam, A cluster of orchids had been digitally pasted where she'd once stood. "They're erasing me from history," she whispered. "No," Simone said. "They're rewriting the narrative, making it seem like you were never the matriarch." A deep voice behind them cut through the tension. "Funny seeing you here, Margot." They turned. Gregory Stanton stood, glass of scotch in hand, smiling like a serpent in a dinner jacket. "Always good to see the discarded rise again," he murmured, eyes flicking to Simone. "Though I imagine you're not here for the art." Margot held his gaze. "You don't get to narrate my downfall, Gregory. Not anymore." He stepped closer. "Careful, Margot. You start pulling threads, and the whole tapestry unravels. Including your part in it." He winked, then disappeared into the crowd. Simone muttered, "He's worried." And then, just as Margot turned back to the photo display, her breath caught. There, in a wide-angle shot of the gala's security detail, almost hidden in the back corner, a woman with raven black hair, watching from the shadows. Same face. Delilah. Margot leaned closer. The timestamp matched the exact hour Margot had been forced to leave her home. "She was there," she whispered. She watched them do it. The drive to the orphanage ruins felt like crawling through memory. Once vibrant with laughter and play, the St. Althea home for girls now stood as a skeletal husk, charred beams and overgrown ivy twisting around cracked stone, like ivy reclaiming secrets. It had burned down 31 years ago, the night Margot was told Delilah died, the night her family shattered. Simone parked under the moonlight, silence heavy between them. "Do y'all want me to come with you?" she asked. Margot shook her head, eyes locked on the blackened skeleton of the past. "No," she asked for me alone. Simone hesitated. "Be careful. Delilah may be your sister, but that doesn't mean she's your ally." Margot stepped into the ruins, her every footfall crunching over soot and memory. And there, in the central corridor, where the chapel used to be, stood a figure cloaked in gray. Delilah, alive, whole, and yet changed. Her dark hair was streaked with silver. Her eyes, once wide with innocence, now guarded every flicker of emotion behind layers of pain. She looked like Margot, but older, not in years, in scars. Neither spoke at first. Then Delilah broke the silence. "So, the Golden Sister returns?" Margot swallowed the lump in her throat. "You're alive." "You're late," Delilah said. 31 years late." "I thought you were dead." Delilah smiled bitterly. "You were told I was dead, and you believed it." Margot stepped forward. "I was 10. They told me you were gone. There was no body, there was no funeral, no casket, just smoke and silence. And you never asked why." "I grieved you," Margot cried. "Every year, every birthday, But you stayed, Margot. You stayed with them. You became a Hale. You married Daniel. You lived in the house Gregory Stanton paid for. And you never once looked back." Margot stared at her, stunned. "Wait, what do you mean? Paid for?" Delilah turned away. "You think Daniel found you by accident? That marriage was an arrangement, Margot. Gregory orchestrated it. You were a pawn. He wanted the Hale name and your biological claim to the inheritance. Daniel was his vessel." Margot's blood ran cold. "No. Daniel loved me. He asked me to marry him." Delilah turned, bitter laughter spilling from her lips. "He was ordered to marry you. Your union gave Gregory legal access to the Hale Trust, our birthright. You were meant to be the obedient wife. Pretty, grateful, controllable." Margot took a step back, her heart thundering. No, that's not possible. That's not who he was." Delilah's voice softened just enough to slice. "Then ask yourself this. Why did Daniel file for divorce right after Gregory finalized his takeover of the trust? Why did he wait until your usefulness ended? Margot's knees nearly buckled. The locket, the ledger, the marriage, the erasure. It had all been orchestrated. Delilah walked toward her, pressing something into her hand. A faded photograph. 2 little girls holding hands. The same image Margot found in the attic. But this one had something scrawled on the back. One was meant to vanish. One was meant to inherit. They didn't just split us, Delilah whispered. They chose who would live in the light and who would be buried in the dark. Margot stared at her. Then why now? Why show yourself after all this time? Delilah's jaw tightened. Because you started looking. And because they're almost done hiding what's left. Margot blinked. What are they hiding? Delilah reached into her coat and pulled out a black notebook. The original inheritance ledger. Names, codes, clauses that were never meant to see light. Our real parents' will. The Hale fortune was never meant for the Stantons. It was meant for the Hale daughters. Margot reached for it, but Delilah snapped it shut. I'll help you, Margot, she said, her voice suddenly colder. But not because I forgive you. Because I want them to pay. Margot's voice cracked. I didn't betray you, Delilah. I was lied to. Delilah stepped closer, her face a mirror of pain. No, you just didn't fight hard enough to know the truth. They stood there, 2 sisters, one raised in privilege, the other in shadow, bound by blood and betrayal. Margot returned to the Hale estate under a heavy rainstorm, the black clouds mirroring the turmoil inside her. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the wrought iron gates, now guarded by strangers in dark suits. The house felt colder than ever, as if the walls themselves had turned against her. Daniel was nowhere to be found. Simone, waiting in the shadowed study, held a thick envelope in her hand. He's disappeared, Margot. No one's seen him since last night. Margot's heart sank. And Tessa, her father, Gregory Stanton, has seized control. They've frozen the estate accounts, locked down the Hale Foundation. It's a corporate coup masked as family business. Margot's eyes flicked to Daniel's desk. Simone pulled open a drawer to reveal a battered leather journal. I found this hidden inside. It's encrypted, but I managed to crack some pages. Margot's breath caught as Simone read aloud, voice low and steady. Liam is not my son. The room seemed to tilt. Margot's knees weakened. What? She gasped. Simone nodded grimly. According to this journal, Daniel had doubts about Liam's paternity years ago. And worse, he suspected Tessa's family knew and manipulated the truth. Margot clutched the journal as if it might crumble beneath her fingers. How could Daniel keep this from me? From Liam? Simone shook her head. He was trapped, Margot, between duty and deception. But now we have evidence that Tessa bribed a doctor to alter Liam's birth records. Margot's mind raced back to moments she'd overlooked, the strange glances between Liam and Tessa's father, the late-night phone calls, the carefully hidden files on Daniel's laptop. We have to confront Liam, Margot whispered. Meanwhile, Liam sat in his upscale apartment, the city skyline a blur through rain-specked windows. His phone buzzed with messages from his wife, but his thoughts were miles away. A knock at the door startled him. Simone stepped in, holding a small flash drive. Liam, I know this is hard, but you deserve the truth. Reluctantly, Liam plugged the flash drive into his laptop. A video played, a hidden camera recording from a sterile clinic office. Tessa's father handed an envelope to a nervous-looking doctor. Make sure the records reflect the Stanton line, he ordered. No leaks. The doctor nodded, slipping the altered birth certificate into a file. Liam's hands clenched the edge of the desk, his world unraveling. Back at the estate, Margot stared at the DNA report Simone had uncovered, a match she hadn't expected. The real father, Simone said, voice barely a whisper, isn't Daniel. Margot's eyes widened as she traced the name, Gregory Stanton. the man who'd manipulated every move, orchestrated every betrayal. Her mind spun. "Liam's father is my enemy," she said, voice cracking. Simone placed a steady hand on her shoulder, which means everything we thought we knew is a lie. As night deepened, Margot confronted Daniel's study one last time. Among scattered papers, a hidden drawer creaked open, revealing letters and photographs. In one letter, Daniel confessed, "I agreed to the marriage for Margot's protection and for the family's survival. But I never intended to betray her. I kept the truth from Liam to shield him, from the pain, from the legacy of the Stanton bloodline." Tears blurred Margot's vision. Daniel wasn't the villain she thought. He was a man crushed by secrets, sacrifices, and impossible choices. But as she gathered the papers, a shadow moved behind the curtains. A cold voice whispered, "You're digging too deep, Margot." Tessa stepped into the light, eyes glittering with menace. "This ends now." The tension in the air was thick enough to suffocate. Margot's trembling hands held the latest proof Simone had unearthed, video footage that could topple the entire Stanton facade. In the dim light of her small apartment, she rewound the clip again and again. There it was, Tessa's father, Gregory Stanton, slipping a wad of cash into a doctor's hand. The doctor nodded nervously, then typed furiously on a computer keyboard. The scene was unmistakable. Medical records being altered, lies being fabricated. "This is it," Margot whispered. "This is the evidence Liam needs." Liam sat across from her, a storm raging behind his eyes. "How can I trust any of this?" he demanded, voice shaking. "You're asking me to believe that my own wife's family, that Tessa, is part of a conspiracy?" Margot's heart ached. "I know it's hard, but Simone has uncovered everything. The bribery, the falsified paternity tests. Liam, you deserve to know the truth." Liam's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, face paling. A new message appeared on the screen. "Meet me at the old pier, alone, if you want answers." Meanwhile, Delilah, distant but determined, arrived at Margot's door, clutching a thick folder. "I've got something that'll blow this wide open," she said, eyes fierce. Documents proving the sisters' rightful claim to the Hale inheritance. Original wills, notarized statements, financial transfers, everything. Margot's hope surged. For the first time in years, she felt the tide turning. Together, they planned a public reveal. The night of the fundraiser came, a lavish gala intended to celebrate the Hale Foundation's legacy. Yet beneath the sparkling chandeliers, the air was electric with tension. Margot and Delilah slipped inside, their pockets heavy with damning documents and digital evidence. As Liam stood by the grand piano, conflicted and torn, Tessa's eyes locked with Margot's. The silent challenge was clear. Expose or be silenced. Suddenly, the room's large screen flickered on. Simone's voice filled the hall, steady and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see is the truth behind the Hale Foundation." The video began, footage of Gregory Stanton bribing doctors, altering birth records, and manipulating wills. Gasps filled the room. Liam's jaw clenched. Tessa's smile faltered. Margot stepped forward, voice unwavering. "This foundation was built on lies. My marriage, my family, even my son's identity. Everything was engineered to serve Stanton's greed." Whispers erupted into chaos. But before Margot could finish, the room plunged into darkness. A scream pierced the blackness. When the lights returned, Daniel was slumped at the base of the grand staircase, pale, unconscious, a faint blue tint to his lips. "Poison," Simone breathed, rushing to his side. "Someone tried to kill him." Liam knelt beside his father, eyes wide with horror. Tessa's expression was unreadable, too composed. In the hospital waiting room, tensions exploded. Liam turned to Margot, voice raw with betrayal and pain. "Why didn't you tell me? About my real father? About everything?" Margot met his gaze, tears streaming. "I wanted to protect you from the truth, from them. But I see now that silence was the worst betrayal. Delilah entered, clutching another envelope. More documents, and something else. Emails between Daniel and Gregory that suggest he tried to fight back, but was silenced. As Margot pieced together the puzzle, a chilling realization settled over her. Someone in the shadows had orchestrated the entire cascade of betrayals, lies, and violence, and that someone was closer than she ever imagined. Daniel Hale's hospital room reeked of antiseptic and regret. Machines beeped softly as Margot stood at his bedside, watching the rise and fall of his chest. He was alive, but barely. Poison had nearly finished what years of betrayal had only begun. Liam stood in the doorway, hollow-eyed. They said the poison was ingested. In his drink, at the fundraiser. Margot turned. That gala was supposed to be our reckoning, but someone beat us to it. Liam stepped forward. And whoever it was, they're not finished. At the Hale estate, chaos reigned. Gregory Stanton had gone underground, taking all financial records with him. Tessa, now publicly disgraced, locked herself in the master suite, denying all involvement in the poisoning. But the walls were closing in. Delilah arrived with more documents, her face pale. "They've buried more than just money," she said, handing Margot a sealed manila folder. "I found something in Daniel's private safe, a confession he never meant anyone to read." Margot tore the envelope open. Inside was a handwritten letter. Her hands shook as she read. "Margot, I've carried this secret too long. I stayed in our marriage not out of love, but out of guilt. Liam isn't my son, but he is yours. Years ago, when you disappeared for that week after your father's funeral, Gregory drugged you and used a donor embryo. You were a surrogate and you never knew. They used your body to birth a Hale Stanton heir." Margot collapsed onto the nearest chair, the room spinning. "They stole my motherhood," she whispered. "They used me as a vessel." Delilah, speechless, could only nod. Meanwhile, Simone followed a digital breadcrumb trail hidden deep in Gregory Stanton's offshore accounts. The trail led her to something even darker, an old property deed, a hidden facility outside the city, and records of multiple clinical trials and fertility procedures dating back over 30 years. Simone picked up the phone. "Margot, we need to talk. This goes deeper than your family. This is systemic." At the hospital, Daniel briefly stirred. Margot was at his side instantly. "Margot," he croaked, voice hoarse, "forgive me." "Why?" she asked, tears welling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel's eyes, glassy with pain, flicked toward the nightstand. Locker key letter. Margot found the small key taped beneath the drawer. Hours later, she and Simone opened Daniel's private locker at the law firm where he once practiced. Inside, old photographs, a list of names, and one chilling folder labeled Project HEIR. It detailed an illegal program run by the Stanton family, selective breeding between high-profile bloodlines, manipulating inheritance, loyalty, and family ties for power. Her own name was listed, so was Delilah's, and Liam's. The next day, a judge called an emergency hearing, thanks to Simone and Delilah's combined legal and investigative efforts. Gregory had been located in Panama and was being extradited. Tessa was subpoenaed. The Hale Foundation accounts were frozen, pending a full investigation. Margot entered the courthouse wearing the same pearl pin her mother once wore, a symbol of resilience. In a packed courtroom, she stood before press and family, voice steady. "My name is Margot Hale. I was used, lied to, erased from my own family. But today I reclaim not only my name, but my son, my history, and my voice." Delilah stood beside her, submitting documents to the judge. The courtroom gasped as financial and genetic records were displayed, proving that Liam's DNA linked not to Daniel, but to both Margot and Gregory Stanton. Tessa tried to interrupt, only for Simone to hand the judge a new flash drive. Footage rolled of Tessa meeting with a man in gloves, the same man later seen slipping something into Daniel's drink. It was her. She'd tried to kill Daniel. Liam watched in horror as his wife was handcuffed, her screams echoing down the corridor. Outside the courthouse, Liam found Margot on the steps. I don't know who I am anymore, he said, broken. Margot placed a hand on his cheek. You are my son. That's all that matters. Tears rolled down his face. I didn't stand by you, Mom. I let them erase you. You see me now, she whispered. And that's how healing begins. That night, Margot and Delilah returned to the old estate one last time to gather their mother's belongings. In the attic, they found an old music box. Inside, another letter. But it wasn't from their mother or Daniel. It was from Aurelia Stanton, Gregory's long-dead sister. If you're reading this, it means the plan failed. Margot, Delilah, you were never meant to be pawns. I tried to stop Gregory. I left evidence. But someone took it. Someone who wanted to stay in the shadows, even after Gregory. The letter ended cryptically. The true architect always hides behind the curtain. And they are not done.